Hello everybody, this is Ride Along Sports. My name is Brandon Taylor and it's college football week 2. It's in the history books. It's time to look ahead to week 3, but we're going to pump the brakes right there. Not just yet. We've got a lot to cover. We've got a lot to talk about today. We thank you wherever you are, however you may be joining us, listening to us today. We're going to get into the schedule breakdown of the SEC teams for week 2 here in just a moment. But before we do, again, I just want to thank you for joining me today, however you're viewing this, listening, maybe on Spotify, or viewing us on YouTube via video, however you're doing that. I so graciously thank you for doing so. My name is Brandon Taylor, and this is not a one-man crew here. We've got my good buddy Zach Ainsworth. It's been very busy these past few weeks, becoming a father among other things. So we're giving him some time. He doesn't have very much time to contribute, but he has been contributing a little bit. And if you want to see some of his content that he's been creating for us, the little bit of time that he does have, you're going to want to look at TikTok. And if you're not over there on our TikTok at Ride Along Sports, you're missing out. We got a lot of content on there. We've been posting a lot, and we'll continue to do so just for that because it's hot. TikTok is hot these days, and you got to get yourself out there. And that's one of the ways that we're doing it. It's just great, quick content that we can do. We can do it professional, or we can do it, we can just put the phone up and make a quick video. It's easy peasy. But check us out there. But no further ado, let's just skip past all that and let's get to what's really important. And that's college football. I love waking up on a Saturday morning, early 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, and tuning in to College Game Day. Now, your show of choice on Saturdays may be College Game Day on ESPN. It may be SEC Nation on the SEC Network. It could be Big Ten kickoff or whatever it is on Fox. Big Noon Saturday, whatever it may be. Big Noon Saturday, I think, is the actual 12 o'clock Eastern game, but you get what I'm saying. But me, I go between College Game Day and the SEC Nation on the SEC Network. And just starting your day, whether you're eating breakfast, drinking coffee, breakfast and College Game Day or SEC Nation, whatever it may be, it just warms the heart. It's part of a balanced breakfast. And this Saturday was no different than any other Saturday. We had a pretty fair slate across college football. We had some big games. I think this week versus week 1, week 2, we had maybe some bigger matchups. Obviously, we'll get to Alabama and Texas. But among others, there were some good matchups, and I can't complain. I can't complain regardless. Week 0, there's not much going on, but it's football. And it's the first dose of it for the year, so I take it. And then week 1 gets here, and there's some okay stuff going on in week 1, But you get to week 2, or you get to this point in the season, and as the weeks progress, I know later this week we'll look on to week 3 more in depth, and then subsequent week 4. And the end of that week, we'll look at week 5, and before you know it, we'll be at the end of November, and we'll wonder where all the time has went. And we'll it's unbelievable when you get to that point. But we're in the now. The season's not quite a quarter of the way over yet, thankfully. And let's take this time to go through your SEC slate. The results from week 2 in college football. We'll start with Vanderbilt. Starting a 11 o'clock Eastern, 10 o'clock Central kickoff, a little bit earlier, but due to a weather delay, it really didn't make much difference at all. But you had Wake Forest beating Vanderbilt 36-20 in that one. The number 1 ranked Georgia Bulldogs get a decisive victory 45-3 over Ball State. Kentucky gets a good victory 28-17 over Eastern Kentucky. The 20th ranked Ole Miss Rebels win 37-20 over the 24th ranked Tulane Green Wave. We'll talk about that one here in a moment. And in an unfortunate series of events, number 23 Texas A&M loses 48-33 in Miami. Ooh, that seat's getting hotter and hotter for Jimbo. Arkansas gets a victory 28-6 over Kent State. The number 9 ranked Tennessee Volunteers beat Austin Peay in a little bit of a shaky start to that game, 30-13. Very interesting. We'll see how Tennessee responds. Oh boy, and here we go. The 3rd ranked Alabama Crimson Tide fall to the 11th ranked Texas Longhorns 34-24. Ooh. The things that you see on the internet, the things that I've seen, and I'm sure you've all seen on the internet, following that game, it's crazy. It is something else. When Alabama loses, but especially like this, in Tuscaloosa, obviously we'll get to that in just a moment. Missouri in Como beats Middle Tennessee 23-19. And number 14th ranked LSU Tigers get a decisive victory 72-10 over Grambling. In the Swamp, Florida gets a good win 49-7 over McNeese. Mississippi State and Arizona, they go to overtime, but ultimately the Bulldogs get the victory, the walk-off victory 31-24 in that one. And South Carolina beats Furman 47-21. And in the late game, way out there in Berkeley, California, the Auburn Tigers win 14-10. Show of hands, if you watched that game, let me rephrase that. Show of hands if you watched the entire game or if you actually managed to watch the ending. Because let me tell you, I tuned into that game after Alabama, Texas, and I might have saw some of the second quarter. The next thing I knew, I was waking up. I opened my eyes. It was 3 a.m, and I was like, wow, I just missed the whole thing. And I saw on the little scroller, the ticker at the bottom of the screen on ESPN, that final score, 14-10. I was like, oh, that's good. That's good. Hugh Freeze did it. Because it's not easy to go way out there and get a victory. It's kind of a trap game. But Auburn pulls it off. We're still to be determined what Hugh Freeze has been able to do to the, an Auburn team that has struggled and has went through adversity for years. So it'd be interesting to see what he continues to do with the team. We'll be on the lookout for that as the weeks go by. But that's your SEC Week 2 results. I mean, there were some good games in here. There was obviously Texas and Alabama. I say in my opinion, I would think other people would have the same opinion, that was the game of the week. You also had, looking just really quickly, because I have to bring this up, because everybody's bringing it up, Deion Sanders in Colorado. No, I didn't say Colorado. I said Deion Sanders in Colorado because it's all about Coach Prime. Now, let me see here. They put a whooping on Nebraska this past week. Let me pull up some stats. Just a little bit of information for that game for you. So, in 2 weeks, they have really... Coach Prime, I give him all the credit in the world. He's done some great things just in the little bit of time that he's been to Colorado. Of course, we all know he was at Jackson State, the HBCU down in Jackson, Mississippi, and got to the number one player, number one high school player in the country. I mean, not anybody can just do that. I mean, it takes somebody like Coach Prime to do that. I mean, there may have been other things involved, but that's beside the point. So Colorado puts a whooping on Nebraska, just like everybody else has put a whooping on Nebraska, 36-14. If we look at a little bit of stats here, for Colorado, because that's what we care about, Deion Sanders, 31-42, 393 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's a good guy. I mean, he's good. You've had a slew of players running the ball and catching the ball, and the defense. Look, I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm gonna have to go back and look at this game. Actually, now that I'm looking at some of these stats, it's really piquing my interest. Now, this may not be the best game to watch against a struggling Nebraska team, but I would like to see kind of some more of Colorado, how they're running the ball, what their defense looks like, their scheme, what their line looks like, among other things. But it's going to be just like with Auburn, just like with some other teams that we have some uncertainty with. Be interested to see what Colorado can do. Not only that, if it can be sustained years to come. That is, if Deion Sanders remains the coach there for very long. I've got an article and some things that we'll get to later talking about Deion Sanders. But before we do that, I want to break down. I want to get into one of our games from Saturday, and that's Ole Miss at Tulane. Now, I watched this game, and I broke it down the best that I could. It was Jackson Dart versus Kai Horton. Of course, Michael Pratt, the quarterback for Tulane, was injured. Now, watching College Game Day Saturday morning in ACC Nation, a lot of those guys, Kurt Herbstreit, among others, seemed to think that was a difference maker. Michael Pratt is a great football player. There's no doubt. He's got a lot of experience. And, I don't know if this game, if the outcome's the same if he plays or not. I don't know that for a fact. I feel like Ole Miss probably does squeak out the victory, and that's not me being a homer. I'm neutral, especially when I'm on here. When I'm on the air, I'm 100% neutral. It doesn't matter. These logos behind me, it doesn't matter, what I say. I try to be as neutral as possible, and Zach does as well. Here at Ride Along Sports, we try to do our best to make sure that you get the most unbiased opinion as can be. Obviously, we have certain takes on things, and look, we may have takes that you may not think are hot takes, or that we don't think are hot takes, but you think are hot takes. We may have takes that we think are hot takes, but are just cold takes, freezing cold takes even. There's going to be plenty of those, but I digress. So, Jackson Dart versus Kai Horton. Of course, the teams, they start out, explosive start, just scoring touchdowns within just a couple minutes. But something that really just floored me and floored really just everybody is the inability for Quinshon Judkins to run the ball. Ole Miss could not establish the running game. I have right here in my notes that in the first quarter, Quinshon Judkins had -3 yards rushing. Can you believe that? -3 yards rushing against Tulane in the first quarter. Usually when Ole Miss gets out and they're the most explosive, they're ready, they're amped. And they start off, they're just like they did here. Explosive. They scored, I don't know how many plays, maybe 3 plays, and they were in the end zone. But other than that, not much happened in the first quarter. And that was really the takeaway for the game. Ole Miss and the rushing attack. Now, I'll look at it this way. A team like Tulane knows that they're not going to match up with an SEC team, with a Power 5 team, like they would with somebody in their conference. Next week they have Southern Miss. Quite frankly, I think that's a closer, even matchup. Now, Tulane will probably come out with a victory, but that's going to be a closer matchup because it's the talent discrepancy. Not to say that people such as Michael Pratt, that was injured, obviously, could play at Ole Miss. He could play it at SEC school. I think he can. I think anybody, can, with the right people around you and the right coach, I think if you're good enough to play somewhere like Tulane, especially with the success that they had last year, you're good enough to play at or compete at least against any SEC team. Now, you may not win, but I feel like you can compete. However, that Tulane cannot, that their game plan is not going to be the same versus Ole Miss than a Southern Miss. That's obvious. That's given. But what Tulane did, and that's smart coaching to do so, they completely sold out to stop the run at any way they could. And they did a good job at that all game. Ole Miss could not run the ball. They could not get anything going, not just with Judkins, but with other running backs as well, because there's a loaded running back room aside from Judkins. And remember, the kid is a sophomore. I mean, imagine how much better he's going to get. And I heard somebody say today on a radio show earlier that, I'm not going to say that they were saying Quinshawn is overrated, but I feel like the expectations were so high because of NIL and a lot of money that he's gotten and the media hyping him up. He was the freshman of the year, deservedly so, at least in the SEC. But, basically they're saying, like, you get hyped up like this and you have this high expectation and it's harder to maintain that. When you're put up on a pedestal, and your expectation is only to go up and up and up. And if you have a bad game like you have now, or, like the past two games, you look back 1 week ago against Mercer, there was no running game against Mercer. And you think, okay, well, they're playing Mercer, they're resting him, they're going to win the game anyway. Try not to get anybody hurt. There's more fish to fry later. But then you get to this game right here, and he can't do anything. And it was crazy to see. And as I pull up the stats of this game, Quinshawn Judkins had 18 attempts, 48 yards, 1 touchdown, 2.7 yard average. His longest run was 12 yards. Tulane, hey, they get a hand. They did what they had to do. You forced Ole Miss to run the ball. And then, here you go. See, I made some other notes here that, Jackson Dart was pretty efficient in this game. I think he was. He was 17 of 27, 267 yards, 2 touchdowns. He did throw a pick and just a bad decision. And he escaped some pressure, I think in particular that game-sealing touchdown late in the game where he, on a 4th down, evaded the sack, the turnover, and turned that into a touchdown. I mean, the kid's getting better. Ole Miss has 3, I think 3 good guys in the quarterback room. And Jackson Dart improved. He looks better, than he did in previous years. And I'm interested to see what he can do under greater pressure because you have some terrible road games this year against Alabama, Georgia, among others. But back to this game here. I think Ole Miss's D-line was holding Tulane's running game for the most part. They did show bursts of explosiveness that would put Ole Miss on their heels. So it wasn't like that there was some explosive plays by each team, I should say. But, it was a battle, especially early in the game and for most of the game. And you look at the final score, and it's 37-20 Ole Miss, but that was not indicative of the game. If you watch half the game, if you watch the first half, you would think, well, how did they get to that point? Well, Ole Miss went in there and they made adjustments, and they got lucky. They did the right thing at the end of the game, and that's what you have to do. So another thing that really, really hurt Ole Miss is penalties. Tulane, I don't believe they had a single penalty all game. Now, Ole Miss not only had penalties, they had penalties that really affected them. And if I can find it here, what was that? But I just remember Ole Miss had Tulane in Tulane's territory. Maybe it was a third down. And due to a face mask penalty, you give Tulane the first down, and then they march down the field and score. So you go from it's fourth down. Yep, right here. See, I wrote right here, a fourth down deep in Tulane territory turns into a first and goal within a few plays because of an Ole Miss face mask penalty. And that right there, simple mistakes. And that's what I say. You're not going to beat, Alabama had some trouble, and I hate to ping pong between, this game and between other things, but Alabama had some struggles with some discipline, and Texas took advantage of that, and that's what Tulane did here in this game. Ole Miss had delay of game penalties. It frustrates me that a team like Ole Miss that runs this hurry up, quick, high tempo offense, that they can't, at least in this game, wasn't completely efficient with that, with getting the play in. And you think, okay, if you look and pay attention, if you're watching Ole Miss play, there's a 40-second play clock. They usually have the ball snapped by the time it hits 28 seconds. They were, and I don't have the statistic here, but they were one of the quickest teams in all of college football at time between the end of a play and the ball snapping to start the next play, like 12 seconds or something on average. This was a year or two ago, but it's basically the same now. And I get it. There were times where there may have been a little miscommunication. There may have been some audibles to come in from the sidelines, and they didn't get set in time, and that's so frustrating because you have 40 seconds. I look back, and it wasn't that long ago where college football had a 25-second play clock. 25 seconds. Can you imagine that? I could not imagine playing and getting to play in 25 seconds. There was a lot of delay of game penalties, but it was just is a different time. And you think they huddled back then. They huddled a lot more back then. So you was having to get the play from the sidelines, call it in the huddle, and then get up on the line. That just wouldn't work. That wouldn't work these days. I'm glad they changed that. That's one of the things that I'm glad they changed. And obviously, do not get me started on rule changes. Do not get me started on how the TV networks are affecting college football, how, we can't cut back commercials, so we have to change the clock rules. We have to do this and do that. We have to cut the game in half. We got to take a knife and we got to trim fat. Don't get me started on all that. Back to the game here. So another thing I noticed was, and here's a thing about, the Ullman Stadium, and I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, 30,000 seat stadium, and it was loud. From people that I had heard that was at that game, loud. Because you think 30,000 people, that's not a lot of people. How can it be loud? Well, they're all packed in there really close, and you have a hot crowd. You've got people that's very interested. Obviously Tulane fans They're giddy because of last year. They beat USC in the Cotton Bowl. The Trojans with the Heisman winner at quarterback. Obviously, they're going to have a lot of momentum. The fan base is going to be excited going into this year. And it was a hot crowd, and it affected Ole Miss early in the game. There's no doubt about that. Ole Miss was shaken up early in that game. So they play on a turf surface, and I don't know if any of you have ever been on a turf surface in the middle of the southern heat. I've never played on it, but it's a lot hotter than grass. You think, oh, how can it be that hot? Well, you're talking about synthetic turf. It's plastics, it's rubbers, it's different materials that are all put together to make that. And I don't know what the ground temperature was, but you just think the heat radiates off of that. But another thing, and this is something I noticed about Ole Miss, they were slipping a lot, and it caused some issues. Some plays were missed. Some big plays were cut down because of players slipping. You know, Ole Miss used to play on a turf surface, and because I remember they would have the advantage going to, say, a neutral site game in Atlanta or somewhere like that, because they were used to playing on a turf field. Well, here, Tulane's used to playing on a turf field, and it didn't affect them as much, because it really is different, you know. It really is different. It's because you wear different cleats, and it's just, it feels different under your feet. You have to play on it to really know, but I can tell that affected Ole Miss. They was not used to playing on that. And I say that, maybe that's a cop-out, maybe that's an excuse, but that was my observation on that matter. But, you know, Jackson Dart had a pretty good day. I think he did. And I had already told you his stats. But let me tell you what Horton did. You know, in the position he was put in, he went 15 of 37, 6.2 average, 231 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Funny enough, I believe it was the interception that Jackson Dart threw. The first or second play after that, Ole Miss got the ball right back on an interception, so that was your defense bailing you out right there on that one. Again, Pete Golding, I think he's going to do a great job. I think Ole Miss is going to be a good defensive team. They just have to interrupt. You know, they can't just be pawns there. You know, there's been years past, and I'd say the past 3 to 5 years, they pretty much just went through the motions. They're playing more prevent defense, keep everybody in front of you. You know, it's okay. We're gonna let this receiver here get 15 yards wide open, but he's not gonna get a touchdown because we're gonna keep everybody in front of us. And I understand that if you have a talent discrepancy, especially in the SEC, you know, it's a lot better to make sure you might want to do what you can to keep everybody in front of you instead of getting beat and the other team scoring every time they get the ball. But they have to start making big plays. They have to get pressure. The line, I thought the line did pretty good. The defensive line did pretty good. You know, but I just want to see more. And Tulane, I think Tulane can have a good year. Let's see what the rest of Tulane's schedule is. Okay. So they had a victory in week 1 against South Alabama, 37-17. And of course they had the loss versus Ole Miss, 37-20. Next week they'll go to Hattiesburg, Mississippi to play Southern Miss. Then they have Nicholls, UAB, Memphis, North Texas, at Rice, at East Carolina versus Tulsa, at Florida Atlantic, and then they'll end the year versus UTSA. I don't know enough about them, and I don't know enough about their competition to tell you how they're going to end the year. what their year is going to look like, if they're going to be as good as they was last year. Could they win the American Conference again? They sure can. I see Memphis being pretty tough this year. I don't really know, as much about how these other schools in the conference are going, but, they have a good chance of doing pretty good again, They showed a lot to me. And among that, their uniforms are outstanding. I mean, Zach and I have had this discussion before. One of the best uniforms in all of college football, no doubt. Their logo is pretty cool too. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I mean, just beautiful. They're doing a lot of things right down there in New Orleans. But I mean, that's pretty much all there is to say about that. Tulane's running back, Hughes. He's tough. He's really tough. He fought for every yard. I mean, there were times where the Ole Miss defense was stacking him up, and he just kept driving those legs, and he would make something out of nothing. And that's really, I like to see that. I like to see when players don't just quit. And it's amazing that they can push a whole pile of guys like that. But that's who Hughes is. He's a tough guy. But I mean, that's about all there is to say about that game. Ole Miss, they managed to, turn it around late. And hey, look, they scored 27 points in the second half. It was 27-3 second half points. I mean, that's domination right there. Hey, it's the second game of the year, and for both of these teams, I think they have a lot of good that's going to come. I mean, this right here makes you excited. Oh, yeah, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention Caden Davis. He kicked where was it in the game? I want to make sure we got it at the right point in the game. Really both kickers, but what was that? You got a 37-yard field goal, a 27-yard field goal, and a 56-yard field goal. This kid can kick the ball, Caden Davis. Now, they had Costa, which is another kicker on the team. I always thought he was pretty good. He was suspended. The NCAA suspended him last year, and that was something that I won't go into. Just unfortunate thing. Really a technicality. Caused him to miss all last year. But this Caden Davis kid, he's incredible. Man, it's so refreshing to see a kicker, somebody that can kick the ball, that can get you out of a situation. 56-yard field goal in college, that's great. And he could have made it from 60. He said he could kick it from 67. I don't know. Maybe we'll see that someday. See the kid break some records. But that was Ole Miss and Tulane. That was really that was a head-to-head top 25 versus top 25 matchup. Whew, boy. And do I even bother to say anything about Texas A&M and Miami? Texas A&M goes down there to South Beach, and Miami just throws the ball all over Texas A&M. 5 touchdown passes, and you had the 98-yard kickoff return for a touchdown. It was ugly, and I'm not gonna break this game down today, but Mario Cristobal, head coach of Miami, has got a good start, and I've heard some people say that maybe Miami's, it feels good. I heard Joe Tessitore during the broadcast say, it feels good when the U is doing good. College football feels right when the U is successful. Maybe so. We'll see what they do. We'll see if they can turn it into a good year. What is Miami's schedule? All right. So they've got... So in the first week, they played Miami, Ohio, and they won. And then they got a good victory over the Aggies. Oh, boy. So next week they'll play Bethune-Cookman. Whoa. And then they'll go to Temple. They have Georgia Tech at North Carolina versus Clemson, Virginia, at NC State, at Florida State. That's going to be a good game right there. At Boston College. So they have a chance to have a pretty good year. Miami does. And I'd really rather talk about them than talk about Texas A&M. But what can you say? I mean, Jimbo is sweating. Now, he's got this major buyout. But, you know, old money talks. And, you know, Jimbo, he's so non-genuine. Disingenuous is the right word that I'm looking for. He blames everybody but himself for everything, and he did no different here in the press conference after this ball game. You know, just like he's handing the offensive coordinator duties over. But he won't say, he's not upfront about anything. I don't know. I don't like his attitude, and I think he's really... He gets so offended because I think he knows that, you know, he's doing a terrible job. And they may end up turning it around, having a good year. They should with the players that they have. The ones that didn't leave. The ones that didn't transfer out, you know, after having the biggest recruiting class in history and doing absolutely nothing, not even making it to a bowl game. But I digress on that. Aggies, it's tough. That's tough. There's no doubt about that. Let's look at the players of the week in the SEC. So the two co-offensive players of the week for the SEC have Spencer Rattler from South Carolina, the quarterback, and Jet Johnson from Mississippi State, the Tupelo, Mississippi native linebacker. No, he was the defensive player of the week. I'm all messed up. Yes, so one offensive player of the week. So you had Jet Johnson and Eugene Asante, linebacker from Auburn, as the other co-defensive player of the week. Check this out. Caden Davis, the special teams player of the week, as he should. He was 3 of 3 on field goals, 4 for 4 on PATs. So we're going to talk a little bit about Alabama and Texas, or what. You all watched the game. Now, whether or not you watch the traditional broadcast or watch the Pat McAfee broadcast, that's beside the point. I think I watched the Pat McAfee broadcast way too much. His version of the sideline, whatever he called it. I think I watched that version way more than I probably should have. I didn't focus enough on the game. Just focused on the tomfoolery. But you had a slow start to this game. 13-6 at halftime. And I was thinking, and let me tell you, and I wish I would have wrote this down. The only place that I can say that this was recorded was in the ESPN fantasy app, where I had said this game was going to be 48 points. Well, I predicted this game to be 34-24. Yes. No, I don't kid you. No, it was 58 points. I said it was going to be 58 points. 34-24. So anyway, I said 34-24, but I picked Alabama, which is unfortunate because the one time that I get the score right, I get the team wrong. I get the winning team wrong. I can't win. So in the second half, Texas scores 21 in the fourth quarter. And this was a great game. I mean, there's no doubt about it. This was a great game. And look, stay tuned to our TikTok. Zach has some comments about Nick Saban that you're going to want to hear. I've heard a lot. I've heard a lot of people say a lot about Nick Saban since this game. And, I don't have any comment. We wait and see. The world is not ending because Alabama lost a football game. Come on, people. But you can say, is this a sign to more things to come? Because it's not just the game. It's not just the game. It's more than that. What does Saban look like on the sidelines? What is he, when he's being interviewed outside of the game, what is he? If he's going on the Pat McAfee show, you can, some people are putting certain things together and they're thinking, wow, he's not the same Nick Saban that we all know and love or all know and hate. Probably more that than love. People hate people that have success. Hey, that's just how it goes. Jealousy, right? No, but for real, let's look at some stats. Let's take a breakdown. All right. Quinn Ewers. He goes 24 of 38, 349 yards, 3 touchdowns, 9.2 average yards per throw. Milroe for Alabama, 14 for 27, 14 of 27, 255 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Boy. So you had a rushing attack from Texas. And look, you could tell, all right? So Alabama ran the ball a lot. Texas ran the ball a fair amount. But there were some bombs thrown in this game. I mean, just some bombs. You had Sanders, the tight end for Texas, 5 receptions, 114 yards, 22.8 yards per catch average. Mitchell, 3 receptions for 78 yards, 2 touchdowns. Just a slew of talent, really on either team. But Texas, I feel like I may be doing this a disservice, but I just think Texas is. They've got it going. They've got it cooking now. Sark is, of course, a disciple of Saban. Excuse me. And I don't like to use that word disciple in that kind of context, but he's a descendant of Nick Saban. He worked under Nick Saban, like many other coaches out there these days. And look, hey, Texas outcoached, outsmarted Alabama. We look back on last year and how close that game last year was. Alabama should have lost that game last year. They should have lost several games last year. But they didn't. Saban always finds a way to win. Because if you win, doesn't matter if you win by a point or 100 points. A win is a win. That's what the record book shows. It doesn't say, well, you won by 1 point. You won, but what? You're 1-0, but you're 10-0, but this game, these 5 games, you could have lost if this play, and this play would have went different. It doesn't work that way. Let's look at what Alabama has, who they have left. So they started out against Middle Tennessee State. They played Texas. So they have USF, And then they get Ole Miss at home. And they go to Mississippi State. Then they go to Texas A&M. They play Arkansas. They play Tennessee. That game could be ugly. May not. I don't know. Tennessee is a gray area right now. And I just don't know. Zach has also, if you tune into our TikTok here this week, you'll see he's got a few words to say about Tennessee as well. It's always fun to see the volunteer fans run to the defense. But hey, we're honest. We're trying to be as honest as we can. And I think Tennessee, don't count them out yet. They struggled a little bit, but hey, the SEC as a whole is struggling. I think it's a big rebuild time for the conference. It's a rebuild year for the conference. Other than Georgia. I mean, I didn't watch the Georgia game. There was no need to watch the Georgia game, but to me, it's Georgia. It's still Georgia and everybody else. I don't know who a close second is right now. It's to be determined. Anyway, so then they go to play LSU. And I know here at Ride Along Sports, we predicted LSU to win that game. And I feel like they're still on track. LSU's still on track to beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa. Should be another good game. You never know. So then after LSU, they play Kentucky. Is that Chattanooga? And then obviously the Iron Bowl at Auburn. I don't expect any surprises there. But you never know. Hugh Freeze is... Hey, don't count Hugh Freeze out. That's something I know personally, but you just never know with him. He finds a way. He finds a way. Either that or they'll fail miserably. But that's what Alabama's looking like. Let's take a look at Texas's schedule, just for the fun of it here, and see. So they start out the year versus Rice. They play it at Alabama. They play Wyoming next, and they go to Baylor and play Kansas, Oklahoma, at Houston, BYU, Kansas State, at TCU, at Iowa State, and Texas Tech. Now, obviously, that is not by any means a schedule on the level of an Alabama, an Ole Miss, an LSU, a Tennessee. But, they've got one more year in the Big 12, and they need to make the most out of it. They want to go. They want to go out of the Big 12 as Big 12 champions. And they may do it. I mean, I anticipate they do. I don't know how good Oklahoma's going to end up being this year. I haven't really studied them very much, but that's what the Longhorns look like. They made a statement. I mean, they beat Alabama by double digits in Tuscaloosa. That just doesn't happen. When was the last time that happened? I looked up this stat earlier. Saban losing by double digits at home. Yeah, it's just unheard of. It's just unheard of. All right, right here. First, Alabama suffers first double-digit home loss since 2006. That was a long time ago. I mean, there's a lot of you that may be watching or listening may be thinking, 2006 wasn't that long ago. 17 years ago. Yeah. Makes it kind of feel old, but that was the last time. Think about your team. And think about the last time that your team lost by double digits at home. All of us, our teams have lost many, many, many times at home by double digits since 2006. It's just how it is. But that's Texas, and that's Alabama, and, we're going to move on here. I said at the beginning of the show we were going to talk about Deion Sanders a little bit, and I saw some interesting conversations being made about Coach Prime I don't know what is his contract at Colorado. All right. Deion Sanders, Colorado contract. 5 years, $29.5 million contract. You know, and I see something here looking at this article that I remember that Rick George, the athletic director for Colorado, signed the contract for him without even having the money. But just on the notion that they know, hey, we're going to get this money. Coach Prime is going to bring us this revenue one way or the other. And he's doing just that. So that's good for him. 5 year, $29.5 million. Now, is he going to be there 5 years? I don't know. And it may depend on what a certain other coach, a certain other GOAT, you know, if he decides to hang up the clipboard, hang up the whistle, whatever coaching metaphor you would prefer that I use. But I saw Paul Feinbaum. We all love Paul Feinbaum, don't we? In a discussion that's been going around that I've heard other people mention too, that is it possible that Deion Sanders could replace Nick Saban at Alabama? Paul Feinbaum says in a quote here, quite frankly, Nick Saban doesn't have the star power that Deion Sanders has right now. I don't think Nick Saban cares about his star power, quite frankly. But that's interesting to me because you look at the other coaches out there in college football. Dabo, Lane, what are some others? I mean, there's so many others. I mean, look, this is not going to happen. Jimbo. Who is going to take the reins at Alabama? Who would want to? Because that's the thing, like, it's one thing being able to say, all right, you're going to step into the greatest coach of all time. You're going to step in his shoes, step into his office, and you're going to take the program over from him. I don't know if I'd want to do that. Because the expectation is going to be so high, I'm going to feel like it's going to be near impossible for anybody to match that. And you may have success somewhere, but that doesn't mean you're going to have success there. Even given the tools and the dynasty and everything, the farm system that you have, getting all these players. Paul Feinbaum says right here, I don't know if Prime is on that list or not, but why not? Why not? Hey. Would Deion take the job? Hey, I'm sure he would. Would he be a good fit at Alabama? I don't know. That's to be determined. You know, because Deion brings a definite, like, egotistical kind of I don't even know how to word it. He's got a big ego, and he brings that around to him. It's like I said earlier, how I pronounce. I didn't say the Colorado Buffaloes. I said Deion Sanders in Colorado. Coach Prime in Colorado. It's all about Deion. And hey, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. He's making teams relevant. He's doing a lot of great things. Colorado is riding high. And they're going to continue that. They're going to continue to get players in that want to play for Deion. You know, people say what they want. I think Deion Sanders is a pretty good guy. Give it that he's got a big ego, but I think he's great. I think he wants the best for these kids. I think he's really I think he has a positive influence wherever he goes. Whether it's Colorado, if it's Jackson State. He's got a big influence, a star power. You look at somebody like Lane Kiffin. He gets eyes and ears to Ole Miss. You wasn't doing that before. And whatever way he does it, whether that's posts on Twitter, whether that's comments that he makes, the way he goes about things, just his, the way he carries himself, talking about Lane Kiffin here. His dog Juice. He's bringing eyes and ears to a program in Northeast Mississippi that has had a lot of success, but has been so low. And for Deion to go somewhere like Jackson State and do what he did there and bring that power, that stardom to somewhere like that, and then to move on to the next level and go to Colorado and do the same. It's just, that's what you get with Deion. And I like it. He's got a lot. I mean, he's got a lot of time ahead of him. He's got, look, I think we're all jumping the gun here. What is Deion going to do at this level? I mean, how high can they go? What can Colorado do? We'll see. That's what's going to be interesting to see. Not only, he brings this star power, brings this ego, brings this all these eyes and ears, and gets everybody so giddy and excited. Are they going to win a lot of football games? Are they going to compete for championships? Colorado hasn't won a championship since like 1990. They were they were an ugly team. And have been for a while now. Is he going to bring him back up? So, yes, it's fun. Like Paul Feinbaum said here, it's something that you can put in an article that gets clicks. Is he on that list of people to replace Nick Saban? Yeah. Let me see. Is there even a list? Let's see this article right here. Mario Cristobal, number 1. Billy Napier. Dave Aranda. Dabo Sweeney. Bill O'Brien. I mean, you could say anybody that is coached under Saban can be on that list. So it's fun to say that. It's fun to, kick the ball around a little bit. But he's doing something right. And I'm excited to see where that goes. And I'm excited to talk to you more as the week goes on, as we get closer to week 3 in college football. That was your recap. Some headlines and some brief discussion on a few things for week 2 of college football. We have a great slate ahead. Stay tuned. We'll get much more content out there for you in the coming days. And obviously throughout college football season. This is, we're here, folks. We're not just here. We're right smack dab in the middle of it. And here at Ride Along Sports, we're going to be here with you wherever you are, in your car, in your truck, on a plane, submarine, in a tank, on a tractor. You could be anywhere. Doing whatever. Join us right here at Ride Along Sports. As always, my name's Brandon Taylor. For Zach Ainsworth, our buddy and good friend, new dad, wherever he is right now, we want to thank you again for joining us. Stay tuned for more content up ahead. This is Ride Along Sports. Have a good one, everybody.